Why is it important to be conducting so much research, to be dropping cameras, monitoring the amount of trash that's on the
I think
beaches
it's
and in
just
the
because it
reefs?
gives us a
Why
better
is this all
understanding of
important
what
to collect?
the anatomy of it just gives us such a better indication of the health of the reef ecosystems around here.
Hmm.
So obviously with the bruvs that we're deploying, we get to see what type of animals are coming in and out.
Yeah.
If one area is particularly more fish than the other, then we could obviously assume that, if we're looking at a large range of data over a couple of months, and we can see that sharks were very apparent in one area until anglers moved there and started fishing, then we
Hmm.
can kind of get an indication of why there's a depletion in a species or why we're not seeing them as often.
Yeah.
Um, but again, these can also be assumptions. But conservation wise, like I say, it gives us a really good indication of what species are there and how often we're seeing them.
Hmm.
And one of my favourite projects that we have is obviously the dive cleanup, so which is where we're going out actually on scuba gear and we're doing reef cleanup. So we're actually getting rid of entangled fish line, sinkers, hooks, stuff that's
Yeah.
left there that a fish could easily swim into and get entangled and disrupted, etc. Recently had a couple months ago where we found remains of a gannet bird that had been tapped around in fishing line attached to a rock.
Mm.
And you can just see how this bird would have obviously ducked down to grab a prey, fish or
Mm.
something, and then got entangled and then drowned, which is really, really
Yeah.
sad. So
Yeah.
it's just nice to see that if we are making a difference. I mean, even when we started doing this, we've noticed a significant difference with the amount of fishing line that we're pulling out now compared to what we did, almost a year ago.
Mm. How has COVID affected that?
I think it's been, probably a positive impact just because we had a lot of restrictions here in South Africa, which, didn't allow us to go outside for a couple of months.
Yeah.
All recreational activities stopped. We weren't allowed to go exercising, stuff like that. So
Mm.
there wasn't any fishing pressure anymore. I'm obviously with the essential travel and
Yeah.
essential work permits, the trawlers and stuff and fishermen are still going out. But in terms of recreational activity that we get from our shoreline,
Yeah.
it tended to drop quite a lot, which I think made a difference to the reefs because they're so rocky around the shallows. It tends to get snagged quite easily.
Yeah.
So I do think that it did have some sort of positive impact in
Hmm.
terms of the litter and pollution wise.
Yeah. No, I got a funny story with that. It's kind of funny. I was out snorkeling around. I can't remember where I was. I wasn't too far from the old house, and I had my camera. I was just doing some snorkeling, and I got caught in a fishing net, in a fishing line. Yeah, my ankle got caught up, and I was with two other guys, and they had to help me out, which is really kind of weird. It kind of says something, because I could have been, I was just tangled up and just like I didn't see it at all. It was really weird, but it says a lot. Like when those lines get out into the water, they cause a hell of a problem.
And I think, what I'd like to touch on as well is that there are quite a lot of an angling community here, and they are here targeting sharks and larger species of fish, for trophy photos, etc.
Yeah.
So it's been one of the main things that I'm kind of looking at the moment because one of the South African legislations, I think it's the DEFA or Department of Environmental, one of them, not the
Yeah.
same as the English one,
Mm.
but they passed a new rule saying that they're not allowed to target shark species under 1.3 meters.
Okay.
So that's been one of the sort of main talks at the moment within the community about, what type of animals they are pulling out and what animals are being, compared to, being caught and kept.
Yeah. No, I find that it's a very tricky argument. That I think there's a guy who follows me on. I've made so many Instagrams over this past couple months because of the situation for different reasons, so I can't remember which one. But what was I saying? There was a guy there who follows me on Instagram. He's a shark fisherman, and he is obsessed with sharks. He never says anything malicious. He actually quite likes my photos when I post the photos up, and I find it really difficult to draw the line between someone. Because what am I trying to say? I wouldn't want to stamp out that enthusiasm, in a sense.
It's a very difficult taboo subject, I would say, just because
Yeah.
they are very passionate about sharks. They are very passionate about fishing.
Mm.
But from a conservation and ethical point of view, the way that they're catching and handling these sharks before they're getting released, and just in their general anatomy, how they are when they're being pulled out into gravity, the air, compared to in the water. Like, they're so much heavier on land, and to be put onto rocks and sand, and their bodies can be huge. They're pulling out bronze whaler sharks, they're pulling out raggies, big large species of rays as well that they're pulling out. So it's a very fine line of how to say which is right and which is wrong, because it also gives us a really good indication of what sharks are in the bay. So on that side of things, and the size and the growth, etc. So it's a very taboo subject, I think.
Yeah. One that's really, really hard to tackle, because like you were saying, when you pull these animals out onto rocks and to sand, where the full effect of gravity is on them, that can damage organs potentially. Maybe, I don't know. I feel like that was what would happen. It would put some damage onto organs. But yeah, I just like, this might just be me when I get into conversations with folks like this. It's just I don't want to say anything. Not because they're bad, aggressive people, but because there's that passion for the animal.